Scientists are racing to assess the threat from the new coronavirus variant Omicron. Authorities have confirmed cases in several countries, including Germany. Israel has imposed the most drastic measures to contain the variant, barring foreign travellers for at least 2 weeks. Some other governments have also tightened restrictions.
Once again, it feels like the world is racing to catch up with the pandemic. Over 60 COVID-infected passengers in Amsterdam wait to find out if they have the new variant. The UK banned flights from southern Africa and still found Omicron in its midst. The list of countries affected is growing, while the research has just begun. There are no lab experiments yet, but they're going full speed around the world to see if the antibodies work or not. We have to be patient and see. The boosters remain important, especially with the variants. They offer protection, but it remains to be seen whether we have to adapt the vaccine. Germany was already facing its worst wave of infections. Now Omicron has been found in travelers arriving from South Africa, threatening to put even more strain on the healthcare system. The Air Force is currently flying patients from one hospital to another within Germany. Just imagine what that means for Germany. I hope that this is a wake-up call for many people, that vaccination is a good thing. Israel has certainly heard that wake-up call. With one confirmed case of the variant and several more suspected, it is shutting its borders to all foreign travelers for 2 weeks and using phone surveillance technology to keep track of infected people. They're the most drastic measures announced by any nation so far in the wake of this new development.
I'm joined now by Kai Kupferschmidt. He's a molecular biologist and science journalist. Kai, welcome to DW. Thanks for your time. There's been some talk already that Omicron may not be making people as sick as Delta. Is it still too soon to hang any hopes on that idea?
Yes, I mean, it's just too early to know this. And if you think a little bit about it, I mean, imagine if I'm tossing a coin and, it lands on heads again and again. How soon are you going to accuse me of, having tampered with the coin? You just need to be, the same is happening here. You really need to see a lot of data because you might get a lot of very mild cases early on. But is that because most people actually do have mild cases anyway? Is it because maybe it's a young population in this case and a lot of them might even be vaccinated. So you just don't know early on, and you really have to have the patience to see how the data pans out. But it is a good reminder that the virus can go in either way. And, wouldn't it be nice if it actually became milder?
It certainly would be. What about contagiousness? I mean, is the new variant much more contagious than the predominant Delta variant?
So I think it will be, this is a question we'll be able to answer a little bit sooner than the question of severity, I think, but we still need more data. What's going to help with that is sadly the fact that we are going to be able to see how this virus now behaves in many other countries that it's spread to. And so it's very important now to look very closely there at what the data says. Is it going to replace Delta in other places where it's been seeded or not? That's what scientists around the world are watching now to get a better handle on what exactly is happening with this virus.
So clearly we still have to, the data is not yet in. But what about, the question on everyone's tongues is, of course, about the efficacy of current vaccines. Do we know anything yet about whether these vaccines will fight against the virus or how difficult it might be to modify current vaccines?
Again, it's a question, probably 2 weeks, and we'll have an answer, because at least a preliminary answer, because people are using the virus, are using modified virus as well. To test against the sera from people that have been vaccinated and people that have recovered. And those experiments will show whether the antibodies we have, that a lot of us have, are going to neutralize this Omicron variant as well. But certainly what we know of the genome of the virus is really concerning. There are a lot of mutations there that we know help escape certain antibodies. It might also be a problem for some of the monoclonal antibody therapies that we've been using. So there is reason for concern, but again, we're going to have to wait and see. And it's certainly right. When I say wait and see, I certainly don't mean that we shouldn't be acting. I do think it is absolutely right, for instance, for vaccine companies to look at how fast they can modify their vaccines and basically get going on it in this time period where we're not sure whether we're going to need anything like this.
Certainly can't hurt to be prepared. All right, molecular biologist and journalist Kai Kupferschmidt, thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.
DW correspondent Tanya Kramer is standing by in Jerusalem. Tanya, on Friday evening, the Omicron variant was detected in Israel for the first time. What's happened since?
Well, a lot of things have happened since a lot of measures have been taken. The Israeli government was one of the first and very quickly deciding already on Thursday to ban the entry of nationals of 7 African countries initially. Now this a list of countries that are now on the so-called red list here has been expanded, and as of last night the so-called coronavirus cabinet has been meeting. That's a high-level ministerial committee that has decided, as you just heard in the report, that all foreign nationals are banned, are not allowed to come back into the country for the next 2 weeks. This is pending government approval, and that goes into effect on Sunday to Monday night. But the list of further measures is actually quite long. The coronavirus cabinet also expanded the quarantine rules for Israelis coming back now from abroad for additional testing on a 3rd day. Now, you have to know it was already quite, the rules were quite strict. You had to have a test before arriving in the country, and then after arrival taking another coronavirus test. And within 24 hours, usually if this test was negative, you could leave quarantine. Now this period has been expanded to 72 hours with a 3rd test on the 3rd day. Now it also gave approval. Again, that's a bit of a controversial measure here for the internal security agency to track, the phone of those people. We understand that's for a limited period of time for those who are suspected to carry this new variant.
Tanya, can you give us a sense of the economic risk that Israel is no doubt taking in closing its borders?
Well, the strategy here, what we've seen in the past month, and the Prime Minister Naftali Bennett has said it again. I mean, he said there needs to be caution taken at the moment. The key is caution and minimal risk. Why keeping the economy open? So Israel sees it more as, closing the borders is a lesser risk than closing the economy inside the country altogether. We've seen this during the Delta wave, when Israel has actually opted to administer booster shots already back in August, which then brought, the Delta wave, the infection rates down in the past weeks. But it will certainly hit certain sectors again, like tourism. For example, this week starts the week of the Jewish festival of Hanukkah. A lot of family members who are not Israeli nationals wanted maybe to come, but also it will hit the Christmas season. I was just yesterday in Bethlehem, West Bank town. They were waiting for tourists to come back. So certainly this will hit the tourism sector. But at the moment, this is the way the Israeli government here wants to go forward.
Many, many thanks. It's Tanya Kramer in Jerusalem.
Well, it was South Africa which first sounded the alarm on Omicron. Many governments have now imposed travel bans from there and the wider southern African region. DW's Adrian Creech reports.
Here at the airport in Cape Town, you can see a lot of anger, frustration and uncertainty in a lot of people's faces. Some flights have been cancelled. The remaining ones leaving the country are almost all fully booked for days in advance.
It's terrible. It's really terrible. She wants to be back with her family. She's got her grandchild there and everything. So, yes, it's very emotional. And, what else can I say?
Let's just hope for the best.
Yeah.
Everything's fully booked, overbooked. You can't get tickets here. You don't know when you might get home. I have a family and 3 small children waiting, and I really want to go home. It's all very strange. Everything was fine when I flew in on November 11th. There was no hint of this variant. The last 2 weeks in Cape Town have been great. It's my 9th visit in 3 years. They're trying to get the economy going again. Everything's safe. I have a lot of German friends who also travelled here. Everything went mad between 9 and 11 a.m. on Friday morning. It's chaos, incomprehensible.
I'm from London, UK. I'm trying to get home today. For people that work abroad like myself, it can be very difficult. And we were starting to get that feeling that it may be behind us, all this. And now it seems to be coming back tenfold.
For many South Africans, the discovery of the variant is a reminder of what happened 1 year ago. Back then, South African scientists discovered the beta variant, which resulted in similar reactions to what we see now. Many nations shut down their borders, which meant that South Africans couldn't travel there anymore, but it also decreased the number of tourist arrivals here. This is what many working in the hospitality industry are fearing now again.
All my clients wanted to come next week, quickly cancelled. We have already 40% unemployment. That means in the restaurant sector, coffee places sector, all the tourism places, nobody will come. And I can't tell you what will happen. So it will major impact.
Everybody's just gotten to a point where there was hope for work. We've gone through a heavy period where certain tourism companies and hospitality has suffered through this whole period of COVID. And it seemed like people started coming back to Cape Town and there was some new hope. And then all of a sudden it just disappears within one morning's decision where airline chooses not to take people from here. I think it's very sad. You know what I'm saying? Because there's companies that's losing their companies. Myself, I'm self-employed. I possibly might lose my vehicle. No work, no money, no income. So it puts you in a difficult situation. Even if you look at this, the poor people that's come 2 days ago, they're all in a state of panic and everybody wants to fly out of Cape Town.
Summer, basically the beginning of the major tourism season, has just started. But with restrictions in place, the airport here in Cape Town will once again look much emptier than before the pandemic.
The UK has set out new measures after cases of the Omicron variant were found there. Let's bring in DW correspondent Birgit Moss in London. Birgit, the UK has tightened its rules, but only slightly. Do people believe this will be enough to keep COVID-19 numbers in check?
The UK has been really liberal since the summer, so virtually there were no restrictions. People were not wearing masks anywhere. Now masks are being introduced, but only in supermarkets and on public transport, not in all indoor settings. Also, PCR tests are being made compulsory again for people entering the UK, and they have to wait for a negative result until they can come out of quarantine. So some rules are being introduced, but it's not a complete plan B. And there are definitely critics here in the UK, opposition politicians, but also scientific experts that are saying it's not enough. And, for example, working from home should have been considered in order to tighten the measures and the restrictions against this new variant.
Birgit, I was recently in the UK myself, and I didn't see a lot of mask wearing, as you mentioned, or for that matter, any social distancing. Are people worried now with this new variant, particularly with Christmas around the corner?
People are desperately hoping that there will be no lockdown, not another Christmas where they can't meet up with their friends and family. Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, has said that he is confident that Christmas can go ahead. However, we really don't know how this virus behaves, and the Chief Medical Officer in the UK has said it's actually inevitable that it will spread across the world. So scientists here and authorities here are working more on the assumption that are buying time now by these measures and want to know how the virus behaves, and that it's not that they can actually stop the virus from spreading.
The UK, as you surely know, has a sophisticated COVID-19 sequencing infrastructure. What are scientists looking into?
Well, yes, the UK has been able to do a lot of genome sequencing and loading this up on an international database. Over 1 million sequences have been loaded up just recently. So the UK is very successful when it comes to comparison with the rest of the world. And this will be good not just for authorities here in the UK, but for scientists across the world in order to be able to study how the virus behaves, how can it be stopped. for example, will the existing vaccines work? So the sequencing that the UK does, but that also other countries across the world are doing in the next weeks, they will really try and race and find out as soon as possible what this virus is and how it behaves.
DW's Birgit Moss reporting from London. Many, many thanks, Birgit. Here are some other developments in the pandemic. Australia has become the latest country to confirm cases of Omicron. Infections were detected in 2 patients arriving from southern Africa. The U.S. has praised South Africa for alerting the world to Omicron. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken says South Africa's transparency should serve as a model for other countries. And Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has told officials to review plans to ease travel restrictions amid concerns over the new variant.